Hello, it's Brian Strain here, and I'm here today to help you solve a big problem that lots of people have, okay? And it's such a big problem, it spreads across industries, it spreads across age groups. It applies to everybody that lives in a capitalist world, right? And that is, am I getting a good deal? Am I getting the best price for whatever it is you want to buy? Well, today I'm going to apply that specifically to option trading, but I want to take a look at this because it's a big problem and it spreads across every industry, everything, right? So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this disclosure. You can see when I start typing in, how do I get the best price? Google has a ton of answers for me. A ton of answers on new cars, rental cars, hotel, Broadway tickets, Airbnb, peanut butter, I'm sure. All kinds of stuff. New cars, used cars. There's billions. There's 12 billion results on how to get the best price for something, right? And so if we take an example, how do you get the best price on anything? How do you measure? How do you figure that out? There's a whole bunch of tools available, as you can see on the internet, for getting the best price on things. There's tools that help you, like TrueCar, that helps you find a new car, a used car, get the idea of what the price is. And they've got this kind of cool little thing here that you can see there's a little bell curve line on that. And you can find out all the prices of that this car with your features that you want, what the base model is, and is the example that I'm using here. But it gives you an idea of price and what to expect, what the average price is, what the best price is, what the cheapest price is, what an expensive price is. And you can see that quickly and easily in this tool. So it helps you find out more information about that specific car that you're looking for and what price it's gone for, what it's sold for in your area. That's a great tool. I really like that idea. Maybe some of you have searched for insurance on the internet, and insurance is very similar to option trading. And who's heard of Gas Buddy, right? Gas Buddy is kind of a cool little place. So if you don't want to pay too much for gas, you want to get a good price on gas that's convenient, all you have to do is type in your zip code and say find gas, and what kind of gas. I'm spelling out regular, and it tells me what the lowest price is and what the average price is. And if I click on the map, it'll actually even tell me where I can get these different prices. So right here is where I'd get that 219 gas. So you can quickly identify where you're going to get the best price and where you're going to, because you can see all the other prices. You can see what gas is going for. You get a better picture of what's going on while you're looking for this, right? So you kind of have to figure out how to, it's going to take some research. It's going to take some research. You got to kind of dive in and figure out, how do I get the best price on my option trade if you're trying to figure out for option trading? All right, so one of the things that the problems we have, if you're trying to buy stock, let's use stock for an example, okay? If you buy a stock, you're not going to find out till later if the price goes up or bad, if you made a good decision or a bad decision. If the stock goes down, you're going to say, oh, I paid too much for that stock. If the price goes up, you'll say, oh, I paid a good price for that stock. You could do the same thing on an insurance policy. You could do that same thing. You could, if I pay $100 a month and I have a $100,000 claim and I collect on that, then I can say, oh, I paid a good price for that. If I never file a claim and I pay $100 a month, I could say, oh, I paid way too much for that. That's called outcome bias, and we'll talk about that some other time specifically, but that's not necessarily the best way to judge whether you made a good decision or not, or whether you got a good price or not. So the only way to really find out if you have a good price or not is to to go out there and compare the prices that you get everywhere else. So there's apps like that TrueCar that go out and make that search quite easy and give you that information very fast. There's insurance apps that you can do that same thing with. Be careful, you might get a ton of email and phone calls from insurers on those. But somebody's taken the time to get all that information, consolidate it, and put it in easy format so you can quickly evaluate whether you're getting a good deal or not. I am so happy to say in this business, there are a lot of different ways that people have tried to say whether you're getting a good price or not, and a number of different measures, and it gets complex and confusing. But it's not complex and confusing anymore because we have Odds Online. Odds Online is a tool that we created, and it does exactly what TrueCar does. It does what these insurance brokers like Insurify and Progressive do. They scan through a number of different insurers and they give you the average, they give you the lowest. It does what GasBuddy does for you. So that can be found in this tool, Odds Online. And I'm going to show you how. So before I show you exactly how, I have a couple of quotes I just got to show you. So one of the ways that people were trying to figure out the best way to value options, to know if you're getting the best deal, is Fisher Black and Myron Scholes and their team figured out the Black-Scholes model. It's an option pricing model, and they created this model to solve this problem, to tell you whether you got a good deal or didn't get a good deal. And Fisher Black, one of the creators, we've got a quote here. He said, "The Black-Scholes formula is still around, even though it depends on at least 10 unrealistic assumptions." That's kind of interesting. This model helped its creators win a Nobel Prize, and it's based on unrealistic assumptions. It's kind of interesting, right? And Jack Schwager, who wrote the book Stock Market Wizards, he said the very idea that any single model could be used to estimate option prices for different markets or stocks is inherently wrong. And then John Bender, one of the market wizards that Jack Schwager writes about, said it's not a matter of coming up with a one-size-fits-all model that is better than the standard Black-Scholes model. The key point is that correct probability distribution is different for every market and every time period. The probability distribution has to be estimated on a case-by-case basis. That sounds like a lot of work, right? That sounds like a lot of work. And for a long time, this is work that people would do, and they would spend a lot of money, and they would create all kinds of things to help them do this stuff. But they biggest investment was time. It would take a lot of time. I want to take you here to Odds Online, and I want to show you some really cool things. It's not just our industry that we're trying to always find the best price, but the methodology is similar. Instead of creating a model that tries to estimate what a good price is, our tool does more what the tools like TrueCar does, or like what GasBuddy does. Instead of modeling what the market does, we're just measuring, we're just counting. And so we have this cool tool here. So I'm looking at the Apple stock, and you can see Apple stock has had a great year in 2019 as we're looking at that. And we have this really cool tool here called MDM, which stands for Measure, Don't Model. There we go. This is the graph. This is doing all of that monotonous, tedious analysis of going back and counting and figuring out the distribution of the asset. So remember, John Bender said that the distribution has to be analyzed on a case-by-case basis. This tool does that every night. It updates, adds the prices, and gives you this graph. And you can see here the orange line is the Black-Scholes model and their probability distribution expectation. So this is they're guessing that the market, that everything that it analyzes, whenever you use the Black-Scholes model, they assume that the future distribution of prices on the underlying asset are going to fall into the bell curve or the normal distribution function. And so with this orange line right here, you can see what that distribution looks like. And you can see in blue, this blue histogram is actually going back, and instead of modeling, it's going to just measure and say what was the distribution in the history, in the past of this asset. And you can see here, the blue histogram does not look exactly like, it's a similar shape, but it does not look exactly like the bell curve. You can see that there are things that are wrong there. And anytime you use a model, that's the standard thing. That's its weakness. It is a model. It's not the asset's actual data. And so with this tool, we're actually measuring what the asset's data, what the distribution of prices has been on this particular asset, so that we can figure out in the future if first of all, is it fitting the model? Does it fit? If it doesn't fit, then you know something that people in the market might not know. Now, this is commonly known among professionals that every asset's not going to fit into that bell curve expectation, but they still use that bell curve expectation, right? So if the market is using the bell curve to figure out what a fair price is, they're probably not coming up with the right answer. Okay, so we can look at this. So on a case-by-case basis, so when we type in Amazon, and we look at that graph, and that looks a little bit closer to that bell curve. Looks a little bit closer. And something else that John Bender said was, it's not just the correct probability distribution is different for every market, and it's every time period. It's every time period. And this is kind of cool too. So we can go up here and we can say, we're not looking for January 17th options, we're looking for January 21st options. And when I change that, that's actually fitting the bell curve expectation much closer, much closer. But now I might do another stock. That's quite a bit different. You can see here that it's jumping out here to these areas, these prices. So the x-axis on here is the stock price. And the current price is 61.19, which would fall right in this area, which is right in the middle of the bell curve, which is to be expected. That's 50%, 50-50, the stock's gonna go up or down. So it's right in between these two lines. And you can see that in the history of this stock, it's moved outside of that bell curve expectation much more frequently, and it stayed in this area much less frequently than it's supposed to, according to the normal distribution expectation. All right. And we can do a number of different things here. So we're looking back over 4 years, and we're saying this is how it's behaved over the past 4 years. We can go back even further if we want to, and that changes. The bell curve is still not going to fit exactly. Let's go out to let's just take all the historical data, and we can see that this particular asset does not fit the bell curve very well. It has much bigger moves than the market is expecting. And if we look at Apple, and we do the same thing, so right now this Apple, the asset, is steeper. So these options, so the bell curve is expecting the stock to move out here much more frequently than it's doing. And the more frequently it moves out to these areas, the more expensive the options should be. The bigger the moves are, the more expensive the options should be. So you can tell that these options are overpriced right now at this point in time. And we can do the same thing here. We can look out to different dates. If we go out a little bit further, they're still a little bit expensive. And we can take in more data. I'm going to put all the historical data here. And when you take all the data in, you can see that in the past, the stock has made moves over this time period much bigger than expected. So by default, this goes to 4 years. And the reason why is there's 1,008 trading days in a 4-year time period. And in order to get statistically meaningful data, a data set should have at least 1,000 samples. So it's about sample size. So you can take in a bigger sample size, or you can focus in on recent stuff. Does the data over a longer period mean more than the recent history? Probably not as relevant as the recent history, but the recent history needs to have 1,000 data points so that you can get meaningful statistical data. We can go down to just the last year, which is probably one of the most relevant time periods to consider, but it doesn't necessarily have a sample size long enough to be dependable. But that's up to you to decide. So what I'm going to show you guys, if you look at this, you can see what the average price is. The average price is always going to be the current stock price, right? Whenever you're analyzing in this fashion, the average price is going to be the current stock price. And you can just see what the price has been over a period of time in the past, where it's gotten really low, what really low looks like, and what really high looks like. You can tell with this graph. And we can see that they differ from the model. So the options in this case are probably a little bit overpriced. The options on IONS are a little bit underpriced. And when I change charts, it resets the default 4 years. And so these are a little bit underpriced. And when we look at Amazon, we'll go out to that same time period. These are pretty fairly priced. Okay, on these options. So that is the tool that we use that gives us the quick and dirty answer. Am I getting a good price? We can see it here visually. And in my next episode, in my next blog post, I'm going to show you how we've turned this data into a specific value. So you can say, is my option fairly priced? Or is it cheap, or is it expensive? Okay, so I will show you that next time. So have a great day, and I will see you on Friday.